Hey guys, and welcome on into the next NHL season preview show. Today we're going to be talking all about the Colorado Avalanche, looking at their offseason additions and subtractions, coming free agents for next season, possible lineup for opening night, and then of course team future bets and player future bets. So a lot of different content coming up here. And to talk the Avalanche with me today is Koby at Avstan account. You can go follow him on Twitter/X. His Twitter link is also in the description below. So make sure to go give him a follow. Koby, give people a brief introduction of yourself and welcome on to the show.
Well, I appreciate it. It's always nice to talk a little hockey every now and then. But my name's Koby. I am the face behind Avstan account. Not a huge following right now, but that's okay. I kind of like hiding out in the shadows for a little bit. But again, I appreciate you so much for bringing me on. I don't do much online content, but it's good to have all the practice that I can, and hopefully this is a good one. I hope I have enough some talking points for you and some things for your audience to think about when they're making their sports bets and all their futures this year.
Awesome. Perfect. We're going to jump right into it here and we're going to jump right into additions and subtractions. Some teams have bigger lists, some teams have smaller lists. And Avalanche actually did a little bit more than I thought they did this offseason. We're looking at things here. Right off the bat, I'll start with subtractions and then go to additions. Um, some guys retiring here: Cogliano, Pavel Francouz, and of course Zach Parise. So some of the older guys here um, retiring for the Avalanche, opening up spots for other players. Yakov Trenin getting traded, or signing with Minnesota in free agency. So I'll be interested to hear your thoughts on him. Caleb Jones is AHL defenseman. Couldn't really handle it with the Blackhawks, and isn't really going to make it with this Avalanche team. So he's gone. Prosvetov as well, and then Brendan Duham, another former Minnesota Wild player. He not currently signed, so we'll see where he ends up, but hasn't re-signed with Colorado. Looking at additions, a lot of depth guys here. Calvin DeHaan will most likely be a staple in this defense for this year. Eric Brandstrom, I have his picture there on the screen. This is a kid with a lot of, well, I guess he's not a kid anymore, but this is a guy with a lot of talent and definitely has potential. So maybe this change of scenery for him will help coming over here to Colorado. Basically, the other guys are depth guys. So when you look at it here, not a lot of big names going out. It's not like Rantanen or Devon Taves or anything like that. The big guns, the big pieces for Colorado are still here. And then there's a couple question marks here with potential players returning from injury. We'll discuss that a little bit later. Koby, what do you think here about the additions and subtractions for the Avalanche in the offseason?
Well, I'm gonna start with Francouz, and I went back actually and watched your Avs preview from last year, and that was one of the biggest questions you guys had was, what is the goaltending going to be like? What is Francouz going to do? And unfortunately, we got that news kind of early-ish on in the last season when he could not come off IR. I am a big avid sports card collector. If you don't see, I have some sports cards behind me and stuff. Um, Pavel Francouz was one of my biggest collects. Like I collect Pavel Francouz left and right, and his retirement hit me pretty hard, especially after his pretty good run up until our Stanley Cup that year. Um, Another thing that I just want to highlight is Ryan Johansson took off last year. See ya. I don't think any of the Avs fans will really be upset that he left, and now I think he just got waived by the Flyers this past week. Um, Without we are like you said with injuries, we're kind of subtracted two extra guys, and with suspensions with Nuke gone and Gabriel Landeskog. But from what I can see on subtractions, Brandon Duheim, I'll miss him. A lot of toughness there. I think that whatever team signs him probably will sign him for some sort of role that he needs to play. He was a great role player on the Avs. Additions wise, um, what's there to say? There's a lot of depth on the blue line right now. I'm really excited about Shillington and the Brandstrom line. Bring in more Swedes, bring in those Swedes. Maybe it'll help Landeskog's recovery somehow. I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of Swedish power going on there. But for Dahan, I'm kind of expecting just kind of decent time on ice, decent depth, above average toughness. That's what we're expecting when you're playing on those, bottom two lines here in Denver is just kind of be tough. The loss of Curtis McDermott when we traded him to the Devils kind of showed right after as well, when we had teams kind of hitting us in the mouth that we didn't expect there. Winnipeg, we lost 7-0 right before the playoffs. So just kind of losing that toughness. I expect DeHaan to kind of bring in that hitting mentality. Kevin Mandalise, I think that's how you say his name. Sorry if I pronounced it wrong. But I do think he is also a very important pickup here, because it gives a Noonan kind of the recovery time last year after Francouz left and Prosvetov wasn't really working out. You saw a Noonan going back and forth between the Eagles and the Avs, and starting some for the Avs and then starting a bunch for the Eagles. Same thing with Prosvetov. I hope we figure that out this year. That is a huge question for us. But a lot of the additions I do like. They kind of nip our problems that we had late last year in the bud, especially bringing in some of those young talents, two-way contracts that the Eagles brought in with Sean Behrens from DU, national title winner Sean Behrens represent. And then we still have some good prospects in the pipeline, like Jean-Luc Foudy. He's still up in Loveland with the Eagles as well. And so just kind of seeing where those guys kind of develop due to these additions, I think is a pretty positive thing this offseason.
Awesome. We'll move on along to the next segment, which is upcoming free agents. We're taking a look at who is an upcoming free agent in the offseason, RFA and UFA. And there's some big names in this list for Colorado here in this upcoming offseason. Of course, Mikko Rantanen is the big name there that everyone will see. UFA, does he get re-signed before the season starts? That's always a question mark there. Or does he head to free agency? Jonathan Drouin, another guy here. And this might be Jonathan Drouin. We'll get to player props later on, future props on the show. But Mikko Rantanen and Jonathan Drouin, these guys might have a little bit of extra motivation with the fact that it is their UFAs. It's a contract year. So they may be guys that you want to look at for future props this season. Some other depth guys below those guys, obviously, those are the big two names when it comes to forwards. A defenseman, three of the guys that the Avs just signed in the offseason here are all either UFA or RFA. So we'll see how those three guys do this season. That'll kind of determine how the Avs go forward. And then Georgiev, UFA. How will he do this season? I think that's a big determining factor, whether he's re-signed or if he finds himself on a new team. Koby, what do you think here, upcoming free agents for the Avs this year?
As it comes to free agents, a lot of those names are the big names. Again, Mikko Rantanen and Jonathan Drouin. Logan O'Connor is a local fan favorite. Again, DU represent another University of Denver guy. Nikolai Kovalenko, his time here would be short-lived if he doesn't, re-sign. He was in the K for a while and got drafted and just got the opportunity to come back over here. So Kiviranta is a big question mark, and Chris Wagner, I think, is one that's kind of back and forth between the Eagles. But Kiviranta is another one where you just want to see that production, and when we signed him on, you kind of expected to see a little bit more production than he gave right off the start, but down the line kind of showed flashes of that that good stuff. So we'll see how it goes. Defensemen, again, like you said, depth guys that we brought in on 1-year contracts just to see how they do. I would like to keep DeHaan if his toughness shows and if his time on ice is quite productive. Georgiev, again, I hope that we have best case scenario with Georgiev, depending on how much he plays in the full form that we know that Georgiev has. Will completely determine my thoughts on his re-signing. I do think the Avs kind of overused him a little bit last year, and it kind of showed. But this year with Annunen, and maybe we can pick up somebody else off the market if need be. I'm hoping that they kind of let Georgiev shine the way we know he can shine, and then when he starts to look overworked, we kind of do give him the rest that he needs. I'm not as worried about about Georgiev's contract as I am kind of Druin's or Rantanen's. I hope we get Mikko's done as quick as possible. Again, as a Denver person, I want to see Logan O'Connor LOC. I want to see him signed, probably maybe to a hometown contract. Shout out LOC if you're seeing this, signed brother. But I do want to see Druin resign, but I don't mind if we wait a little bit, just because we can work on that during the year. He's a top 5 team scorer. He's 10th on the team in penalty minutes, but he is coming off his best year so far in his career, his best points year, as it is offensive production, runs the league. So his best year was this past year points. So those are kind of the ones I don't mind is Georgiev and Druin, but the scary ones, Mikko and Logan O'Connor, I would love to be confident in saying that they're coming back. And they're going to be part of, Avs history for a long time. Georgiev and Druin, I understand. Kind of Druin's probably going to have a pretty high asking price. And with Landeskog coming back, we'll see where the cap space lands.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be something to look at. And that's a perfect segue right into the next segment, which is possible lineup. And I'll let you start here first with this one, but I just want to highlight Gabriel Landeskog is in a different color here than everyone else. From what I'm hearing, he is expected to make his return early on in the season. So most likely probably not day one. And of course, the possible lineup segment is kind of looking at what we think the day one lineup will look like. But Landeskog, if he does return early on in the season, that's a huge addition. And then you just have to kind of move everyone else around.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get to as well, the possible lineup here is made by depth charts that I've looked at from NHL teams. So don't get upset in the comments like people do about the possible lineup. This can all be different. This is not set in stone. This is just what's projected. So, Koby, what do you think here about this possible lineup? What do you like about it? Is there anything you would change? Different guys you'd put in different spots if you were the head coach?
I don't think I would change it necessarily. I love my favorite line on this chart here is the Wood, Ross, Colton, Logan, O'Connor line. That third line is actually pretty productive. I have them as my dogs. I have them labeled as dogs in my notes here. Logan O'Connor, Ross Colton, just workhorses, man. Miles Wood, same thing. Can just kind of, if they're all on fire the same day, it's hard to stop that third line. Very big, high expected goals production and compared to the rest of the NHL third lines. At 282 minutes played last year, that's all you want right there. Is the expected goals per 60 minutes led the team last year at 3.79. So that's actually kind of nuts to say about a third line. The only thing that I have as a toss up there is that third defenseman pairing in the Shillington and Brandstrom. New guys. Let's see how they work. Let's see kind of how Bednar kind of moves him throughout the lineup and stuff like that to see if we get any different pairings with maybe a Gerard Brandstrom or a Shillington Manson, or maybe even taking Taves down to the second pairing, as we've seen him do in the past when we've had kind of issues with depth. Top 6 I think will be a work, depending on like Kovalenko production. We don't know how he's going to do in the NHL. We don't know how he's going to pair up with Middlestat. I believe the bottom 2 lines this year, I believe in them more than I did last year, if that makes sense. And so I can't wait to see some of those young guys like Oscar Olausen, who's come up through our pipeline, kind of just shine, whether they get that time in the third line or the fourth line. I hope they shine. and it just depends on how the Avs push through the season, with or without the injury bug. Are we going to see a best case scenario? Is all the disappointment from last year, like losing in the second, no nuke, no Landeskog? Will they pull through? Will the Avs come up with the best case scenario with this lineup? And I think there's a good chance. Those first two lines, again, I'm very confident in seeing Casey Milstead and Kovalenko kind of produce together. Lehkonen, we already know can move up to that first line if necessary. So I'm confident. I think is the best word. I'm confident in this lineup that you have as it is right here. If it can stay that way, if it can stay that way.
Awesome. Of course, Nishushkin is not on this list because he will not be playing until a certain part of the season. And he's a big question mark. Signed for 4 more years after the season. Um, his status is a huge question mark on the Avalanche team. But when you're looking at future bets, which we'll get to here shortly, it's something that you have to look at. It's a huge factor in looking at future bets. If Nishushkin comes back, how he looks.
Yeah.
For me, on this roster, the defense there's more depth there now. There's definitely more depth with the defense. How chemistry works with that third pairing um, will be a huge factor here. The top four is great for the Avalanche, and I'm not a believer in Georgiev. So I'm not a believer in Georgiev. I don't think he's a quality NHL starting goaltender. I think he's more of a backup, but that's my opinion. But the Avalanche's defense has made him look better, I think, at times than he actually is. I know that's horrible to say. Well, it's not really horrible to say, but I think the Avalanche's strong defense has really helped him. So bringing in some other guys to maybe even improve that defense further will only help him further. Looking at the offense, what can you say about that top line except that every team's defense is focusing on stopping that top line? And some nights teams are able to kind of slow them down, but on most nights, stopping that top line is extremely difficult. The second line, Middlestat, how is he going to do this year? How is he going to do with the Avalanche this year? That's a question mark. I think that line does have question marks. The bottom line, of course, the fourth line obviously doesn't get as much ice time as the other line. So you can mix and match guys depending on how things go early on in the season. You really like that third line. And
Yeah.
I can definitely see it's a tough line to play against.
Yep.
That's for sure. We'll see how much offense they can get from that third line. But not to beat a dead horse, but when you've got that top line, any offense you get from the bottom two lines is a plus.
Mm.
So we'll see exactly how the lineup goes heading into the season. Looking at team future bets. So we've got the same bets for each team here for every team. Win Stanley Cup plus 1,300. You could look at the Avalanche. They are going to be a team that competes for the division title, which is plus 260. When I'm looking at the division, it's a tough division. Central is a tough division. Bottom teams improved in the offseason. You have the Nashville Predators that went and signed the top two free agents and one of the top defensive free agents. So Nashville kind of went crazy there in the offseason. So when I'm looking at future bets here, the Avalanche are not a team that I'm really looking at for future bets. And it's not because I think they're going to have a horrible season or anything. It's just that the Central is an extremely tough division. So depending how things go during the regular season, I may end up pulling the trigger on a Stanley Cup ticket for the Avs if they're having a great season. But preseason, they're not really one of the teams I'm looking at for future bets here. Make playoffs, minus 525 for yes. What can you do with that? Not much. If you're betting no, then you're really hoping that Landeskog doesn't come back or that he doesn't play very well, and you're hoping that the other teams in the Central, um, of course, do better than the Avalanche. I wouldn't be betting that if I wouldn't be betting that.
Yeah.
When it comes to the point total here for the Avs, again, it's tough because they're in such a tough division. I think the Central is going to be the best division in hockey this year. So the Avalanche had 107 points last year. Now they're at 102 and a half. And before, when I was getting the show ready, when I was making the backgrounds for all the shows, I was looking at the Avalanche as a team that I think was going to take a step back this year. But of course, after looking through things more with the Landeskog news, I don't know if the Avalanche fall back 107. I don't know if they fall back 5 points
Yeah.
when all is said and done. I think they could be pretty much even to what they were last year. So I would potentially look at the over and 102 and a half points. No value with 90 or 100. I don't think they get to 110. Of course, that would have to be an improvement from last year. And then least points in the NHL. Um, that doesn't cover the Avalanche. That's definitely for other teams that we'll talk about in later days. So that doesn't really apply, but I put the odds there anyway. Koby, what do you think here when it comes to team future bets for the Avs this season?
Well, of course, I'm in my echo chamber here in Denver, so there's been lots of talk about being the top for the division at least. Of course, like you said, maybe lower our expectations because it's going to be feisty this year, and not only in our division but in the West. If and in our division, if you can think about it, um, Dallas, Winnipeg, Nashville, Colorado, right? Who do you bet is going to be last in that division, right? It's almost harder to bet like, all right, who's going to have, the weird season where who's going to end up last? It could be Colorado actually, but I'm hoping it's not. But it could very well be Winnipeg, or very well could be Nashville even after their two large free agent signings. But at the same time, it's just as much up in the air as who's going to be first. So I'm not really a big fan of that division bet, like you said. One thing that the abs have kind of blessed me with the past few years is a little bit of a slower start, like a little bit of that kind of tough away schedule at the beginning. Or it's kind of like, 2 years ago, I think McKinnon was out a little bit in October, November, and it was kind of like the fans were just in a rumbling about blah, blah, blah. We're bad, but we weren't. This year, I am singing a different tune this year. At the start of the season, it's not too bad until November. We only have 4 away games until about mid-November. So we start with a tough one. We start at Vegas, but then we go at home versus Columbus, at home Islanders, at home against Boston, at home against the Ducks. And then here's our road trip. Ready? Listen to this road trip that actually at San Jose, at Seattle, at Utah Hockey Club. Not bad for an away trip. And then we're back home versus Ottawa, back home against Chicago, and then back home against the Bolts of Tampa Bay. So I like our start this year. And that leads me to say that, maybe we get Val back. We get Val back in November or December. So that leads me to say that, leading up into getting some of our guys back and in form for the season and fit, that we might not have too bad of a time getting those new guys in their roles, messing with the lineup at the beginning of the season. So I do like that over 102.5 points. Like you, I do like it just because I don't think we have those beginning of the season woes. And even if we do this year, they're not as bad. And maybe that leads us to playing poorly later on in the season when we play the, upper echelon of the NHL teams. But I do like the 102 and a half over. Again, we ended up with, you said 107 last year. So we have the means to do it. I don't think we got worse. But, it just depends on how much better, we can be.
Yeah. And then the Central, how the other teams in the Central do, because it
Yeah.
is such a tough division.
And then even if you do get out of the Central, the Oilers are on a revenge tour this year. And so it's going to be even tougher when we're playing Western Conference opponents that aren't in our division.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Looking at player future bets. Now I had to split this into two segments. So we've got the player stats here in this one, and then the awards, which we'll do here after this one. So I'll just briefly go through these here as I have all the numbers set up here. So McKinnon last year had 51 goals, 89 assists, so 140 points. His point total is at 121 and a half and goals at 43 and a half. But of course, last year was the best year of his career. So he's coming off a career year. The season before, 42 goals. So his total's at 43 and a half and 111 points. So his total's at 121 and a half. So if you think McKinnon is going to replicate or come close to what he did last year, you're going to want to take the overs. Because of the season he had last year, I am expecting him to come back down to earth a little bit, but you never know. So I don't have plays here when it comes to any of the Avalanche players as of yet. Of course, there's so many different players on so many different teams that I'm kind of just going through the previous shows, and then I'll be kind of locking in my player props once I've done them all for the most part. But there is a few exceptions to that. Cale Makar at 21 and a half goals. He had 21 last year, 17 the year before that. Did miss some time injury, and then 28 the season before that. So he could potentially hit that goal total, but if I was going to look at my Makar prop, I would go with the point prop instead. 90 last year, 66, but only played 60 games in 22-23, 86 in 77 games in 2021. So Makar's having a great season last year with 90 points. 88 and a half is tough though. So he's basically got to replicate what he did last year, which is tough to do. Yes, last year was a career year for him. We touched on at the beginning. Mikko Rantanen here, 42 goals, 104 points last season. So the numbers are pretty close to what he did last season. The season before, 55 goals and 50 points, and 50 assists for 105 points. I would look at Rantanen goals over. He's going to be, as I said earlier on in the show, a motivated player this year. 42, he got it last year, 55 the season before that. So I would be taking Rantanen goals over. Points at 102 and a half, 104, 105 the last two seasons. So very close to that number. I don't not like it, but I would go with the goals instead, in my opinion. Casey Middlestat here. If the odds will, here we go. 18 and a half goals. Last year he had 18 combined with Buffalo and Colorado. Only played 18 games for Colorado, 10 total points last season, 57 points total on the season. Now he's at 50 and a half. Middlestat is one of those players when we're talking about the lineup that I have question marks about with his first full season with the Avalanche. So if I have questions about a player, I'm definitely not going to be taking their future props. So easy one there. Jonathan Drouin, again, kind of same thing with Mikko Rantanen. He is in a contract here. Last year, 19 goals and 56 points. And his props here, 18 and a half goals, 56 and a half points. So pretty similar to what he had last year. Now, last year was the first year since 2018, 2019 that he played over 60 games.
Yep.
So he had 79 games last year. My issue with taking his props is the fact that he has not played a full 82 game season in his career. Yes, he had 81 games in that season with Montreal 2018, 2019, but he has not been a player that has played full season consistently. And when you're looking at player future bets, you're kind of banking on this player to be healthy 75 plus games of the season at least. So no plays there with me and Druin. Georgiev, we kind of discussed him earlier. I kind of gave my thoughts on him. I still think he's going to rack up the wins. But as you said, if the Avalanche do kind of give him a break and kind of look at the backup goaltenders, he might not hit 32 if he doesn't play as many games. So no play there for me. Basically, on this sheet, it would be Rantanen goals over, and for me in this one.
Mhm.
Koby, lots of player future bets here to look at to choose from. Any stand out to you? What are you thinking here?
Well, I'm mostly on the same page as you when it comes to Miko Rantanen goals. I do like that goals prop, especially because he has shown that he is the workhorse when there is no McKinnon, when there is no Druin, when there is no Nuke, when there is no Landeskog. Moose is always there, So it's always nice to have that in the back of your mind, knowing that Miko is always going to be the one carrying that top line with very minimal loss of time. Middle stat, again, I'm mostly on board with you. He started hot last year. He has a lot of 5-on-5 production, but kind of ended the regular season on this weird like 6-game like skid with only 2 points. And then we started playoffs, and again he had some like he was hot. And he had 3 points against Winnipeg, and then kind of like started off like everybody was like, "Oh snap! It's the year of Casey Middlestat in the playoffs." But then kind of dwindled down as dramatically the Avs exited the playoffs without Val Nichushkin and injuries and stuff like that. Kind of ended our season, but um, how will he be when he gets comfortable in his role? That's my thing. When Bednar really gets him a full off season and kind of gets him in his spot and gets him comfortable with the Kovalenko line, how's Middlestat gonna do? And Arturi Lehkonen is another great linesman there where he has first line experience, and if we're able to say Middlestat and Kovalenko are up to par with Lehkonen, well, I love our first two lines, but that's just again another big question with Middlestat. Druin, this is where I kind of disagree with you here. I love Druin this year. He's coming off a big year last year. I think that UFA is in the back of his mind. Where's he going to sign? What's his price tag going to be? If he can get 2 good seasons under his belt, um, and I'm not going to hit the goals. I'm going to say points just because I feel like Miko and Nate are going to get their fair share of goals. But Druin, I think, is going to be assist man. I think he's going to average, an assist a game, probably a couple assists a game. Who knows? But Druin, I think, pops off this year. He's got that contract in the back of his mind. He's coming off his best, kind of his best year. But I do think you bet on Druin and Miko in their contract year. Georgiev, I'm agreeing with you here. I don't know if he's going to get enough time to win 33 games. Um, and if he's on fire, again, I hope that they give him the rest that he needed last year. You know, so maybe he wins 33. That's kind of a high number when the rumblings are that they want a Noonan to come in at a better, more time on ice role. But Georgiev, it's a little enticing, just depending on. I would keep an eye on the goaltending situation because we know Georgiev can play a bajillion games in a season. He can win 33 with that Avs defense in front of him. It just depends on the workload. So mostly agree with you, but I just that true in line is talking to me.
Hey, no, I don't. It's not like I think he's gonna have a bad season. It's just the injury history.
Yeah,
That's my issue with betting him, because I do like him in the contract here as well. But injury history with these kind of bets, if he does have another healthy season like last year, then I can see him hitting it for
yeah.
sure. When it comes to Georgiev here, I did bring it up while you were talking. So 2022, 2023, he played in 62 games and had 40 wins. And then last year he had 38 wins and played in 63 games. So he's definitely hit that more than you need for the 32 and a half with 40 and 38. But do you see him playing maybe 50 games instead of 60?
Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the tough part there, especially because they're really high on a Noonan, and I'm really high on a Noonan too. I collect him as well, but um, I do think that giving a Noonan a chance this year, especially I went through the first month of games. I wouldn't mind seeing a Noonan, in there a little bit more than we see them for the rest of the year, just to kind of get him again in form and fit and stuff like that. But that Georgiev line, it's it's enticing.
Yeah, the odds are high on him, and if he does play well, he's probably going to see more starts.
Yeah, yeah,
So if you want Georgiev wins, then you really should be kind of low on Annunen. If you like Annunen, if you think he's going to have a good season, then maybe you want to stay away
yep.
from Georgiev wins. We'll start with you, Kobe, for the final segment here, which is the trophy winners.
Hmm.
So I've got 4 listed on here, potential winners here. Give me your thoughts on these and anything else you think for the award ceremony for the Avs team.
Um, I love the McKinnon lines again. McKinnon is the plus 300s usually it's not a ton of juice there for a season long future. But maybe Kucherov and McDavid kind of push him up there again this year. I know he kind of felt the pressure last year to keep going, but we'll see how everybody does this year. I'm not gonna go crazy on those again, just because we do have McKinnon on his revenge tour or McDavid on his revenge tour with the Oilers. Um, I'm going to stay away from those McKinnon awards. But Cale Makar, Norris, best defenseman in the league. I don't care if it's plus 250. We're going with Cale Makar, baby. We're going Cale Makar to win the Norris, best defenseman in the league. I would bring up the stats, but it would waste my oxygen just doing it. Everybody knows it. But Bednar for the Jack Adams. Again, we spoke a little before the show. Um, it's gonna have to be kind of a cold day in Hades, I think, for Bednar to win the Jack Adams this year. But I am pretty high on a couple guys, maybe some dark horses there. But um, award winners this year, I don't know if Colorado's gonna have a ton, except for Makar. But I am looking at somebody else that you may know. His name is Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov, but we'll talk about him in a different time. But I am very high on this Colorado Avs team. Maybe no award winners, but I think there's enough food to go around for everybody at the table this year.
Oh wow! Well, we'll talk about Kaprizov now. The Minnesota show is already filmed. Now this show is going to come out before the Minnesota show, so I'm not going to say too much on my end. But what do you think about Kaprizov?
I mean, last year, of course, Minnesota kind of a little disappointing, but I do think with Kirill and some of the additions you guys have had just from your young guys, with gosh, who's the other young guy? Boldy. Um,
Yeah, he plays with Boley. Marco Rossi could end up finding his way on the top line, but Joel Eriksson Ek is great. I love
yeah,
Joel Eriksson.
I think
So,
Minnesota this year. I think you guys probably a little bit more excited about this season than you were last season, but I think Kirill the Thrill is absolutely electric, and he's going to be the face of the next generation of great hockey players. I think it's already established.
awesome. And that's it. That is the Colorado Avalanche
And then
preview show.
can I throw two more little
Sure,
sorry
go ahead.
two more at you.
Yeah.
We talked about Georgiev. We talked about Georgiev, and I know we said some very mean things about him. But let's think about it this way. Best case scenario for the Avs, he plays again a very high amount. He wins a lot of games. Georgiev to win the Vezina is plus 8,000 right now. I'm just throwing that out there for you. I'm just throwing it out there for all those people that want to think, maybe I get Georgiev wrong. Maybe I made the wrong decision. If he comes out and his workload is the same as the past 2 years, and he is winning more than he has the past 2 years, and his defense is even better than it was last year, I do think Georgiev has a good chance. Where at the middle, 3/4 of the way through the season, everybody's like, why is Georgiev in the Vezina conversation? I don't want to think that, which makes me think I want to think that. And then another one is not hockey related, but shout out to one of my friends who went to Colorado State, played football there. Um, Actually, is one of their highest, record holding receivers. He is going to be, um, you know, probably at the Colorado State game. I'm picking Colorado State spread against University of Colorado Buffaloes. Go Rams. Forget the Buffaloes. Sorry, Coach Prime, but we're taking Colorado State.
There you go. Now, when it comes to the Georgiev Vesna, if he wins it, if let's say he does win it, I'm nobody's ever going to let me forget this preview show and the comments I made earlier about him. So I'm going to kind of hope that maybe he doesn't win it, just for my reputation. No, I'm kidding.
I
But
hear you. I hear you.
hey, Wild fans, Colorado Wild Minnesota and Colorado, for those who don't know, of course, are two very big rivals. So there's going to be some jabs thrown in there, but it's all good. That is the Avalanche season preview show. Thank you, Koby, so much for coming on. It was a great show. Everyone, go give him a follow. Avstan account on Twitter/X. So go give him a follow. Anything else you want to say, Koby, before we finish off the show?
Not really. I appreciate you and appreciate the invite. Again, anytime you need me on, I'm not good at it, but I love doing content. So I would love to talk more about Avs hockey or any other hockey team when the season starts if you want to.
Awesome. You are good at it. You did a great job.
I
Thanks for
appreciate it.
coming on. Thanks for watching, guys. And we'll see you on the next show.